Spanish tortilla. Today we're going to be making a Spanish tortilla, and I'm going to be talking to you about how to peel some potatoes and then also how to use a knife and some proper knife handling skills. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get about 3 medium-sized potatoes. 2 of them I've peeled already, so we don't have to sit around and watch you peel potatoes, but I want to walk you through how to peel. There's many different types of peelers, but I like to hold my vegetable that I'm going to be peeling, and then I always peel away from myself with a peeler like this or something like this. You might have a variety of different types of peelers at home, but I try to keep my fingers away from the end so you don't slip and cut your fingers. So if you hold one end of the vegetable that you're peeling, it's always going to be much safer, and then just push away from yourself. You can also set it down on the chopping board if you find that easier so you don't slip. But do one side, turn it around, and then you're going to peel the other side. Okay, once that's all peeled, you're just going to set your peelers aside, and then always clean up your mess before you move on to the next step. So now I'm going to walk you through some basic knife skills. You can use a larger knife or a medium-sized knife. I'm going to use something like this because I think it's nice to handle. It's appropriate for what I'm cutting here. I don't like to cut things on a rounded edge, so I always like to start with what the first hold I'm going to teach you, which is called a bridge hold. A bridge hold looks like this, so it looks like a bridge that something can pass underneath, and in this case the knife is going to pass under the bridge. So you're going to hold the food on either side, your knife goes underneath, and then you can cut the fruit or vegetable or whatever you're cutting in half, and then you can place it on a flat surface, which is much safer for you to cut. Now that you know how to use the bridge hold, I want to teach you another hold that you're going to use to cut the potato into thin potato chip style. So this next one is called a claw grip. You're going to hold your 3 fingers here. Your thumb and your baby finger are going to touch, and they're going to sit behind, but your 3 fingers are going to sit up nice and tall, and you want to almost put like your fingernails are going into the food so your knife can rest up against the fingers so you can make a nice straight cut, and that way you don't ever have to worry about cutting your fingers. If you keep them flat, it's much easier to cut the tips of your fingers very easily. So the safest way for you to cut this is to use the claw grip. So it's going to go in here, and what we're going to do is I'm going to hold my knife. You can use a blade grip, which you have your thumb and your pointer finger on either side of the blade, and you can cut it like this. So you're just going to push forward and back, and you're cutting the potato into very thin strips. So you want them quite thin. You can see here they're about 1 to 2 mil max in size. So you're just going to take your time cutting the best you can, as thin as you can, these potatoes. When you get to the end, it might become a little bit more challenging for you. So if the potato starts rocking back and forth, what you can do is you can switch back to that bridge hold, and then just very carefully go ahead and continue to cut the potatoes. I'm going to continue on. I'm going to cut all these potatoes, and then we're going to move on. So one more thing I didn't mention is if your potato is quite large, what you can do is you can cut about 1/3 of it here first. And then what you can do is you can turn it this way, and you can cut it again in half, and then you have about like three pieces that are 1/3 of the potato. And then it's much easier for you to cut. And you can just go ahead and continue to do the cutting like I showed you earlier. There we have it. A great introduction to your knife skills. Again, that was the bridge hold, knife goes underneath. The claw grip, your blade sits up against your fingers are nice and straight. The way you can hold the knife, you can hold, this is called a hammer grip, where you're holding the handle. the blade grip where your thumb and your pointer finger sits on either side. When you're cutting things like root vegetables and you have to push down harder, the blade grip gives you more power because your hand is up higher on the knife. The last one, which we'll do, is called the draw. It's where your pointer finger sits on top and you would cut it and straighten. We'll be introducing that later on in the week. So let's move on to the next step. We're ready now to start cooking our Spanish tortilla. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna get 4 tablespoons of olive oil, okay? I don't have an actual tablespoon at my friend's house where I'm doing this, so I can just use a tablespoon that you would have in your everyday kitchen. So 4 tablespoons, it's quite a good amount because you really need to coat all of the potatoes that we're gonna be cooking. 2, 3, 4. I wanna cook them really well in this oil. So once the oil is in there, go ahead, turn on your stove. You're gonna turn it on to medium heat, so about power 3 if you're using an electric stove. And then I'm gonna just go ahead, I'm gonna season my potatoes with a little bit of salt. This grinder doesn't come out a lot, so do quite a bit. And a little bit of pepper as well. And then what I'm gonna do is just gonna toss up the potatoes in the seasoning in the bowl here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna place them all inside of our pot, or pan, I should say. So once they're all inside the pan, what we're gonna do is we're gonna then take a heat-proof spatula, something like this, and we're just going to make sure that we coat all of the potatoes in the oil. You want a pan that is gonna just fit your potatoes, okay? And you'll see why later as we continue to cook, and when we have to flip them, you'll understand why it needs to be this is a 20 centimeter frying pan. Now that you have all the potatoes inside the pan and you've got it cooking on a medium heat, you're just gonna grab a lid and you're gonna place that over top and you're gonna set a timer for 8 minutes. All right, there we go. Now as the potatoes are cooking, you're gonna not just wanna leave them there, you're gonna actually need to make sure that you stir them, because if you don't, what's gonna happen is they're gonna burn, okay? So every minute to 2 minutes maximum, you need to make sure that you give the potatoes all a little bit of a stir to prevent them from burning and allows them all to cook up and soften. So just keep an eye on your timer and keep your spatula nearby so you can do that. Meanwhile, what we need to do is continue on with our knife skills and cutting a little bit more. So again, just like I said before, when you have something round, it's not easy to cut. So the first thing I do is I use the bridge hold, and I'm gonna go put my knife and cut my vegetable or fruit, whatever I'm using, cut it in half so I have a flat surface so it's easy to cut. The next thing I usually do is I cut off the root of an onion, a little bit on the top and the bottom. So that's the root part and the stem. Move that to the side. And then if yours still has the brown skin on it, you can go ahead and peel that off. I've already done that ahead of time. I'm gonna show you another technique how we're now gonna mince up our onion that's gonna go in with the potatoes next. So what I wanna do is, I'm gonna hold my knife again. I like the blade grip, so I'm gonna hold my knife on either side here. I'm gonna use the claw grip and I'm gonna just take the knife and I'm gonna cut all the way through to the end, but I'm gonna leave a little bit from the end where I don't actually cut all the way to the end of it. I'm just cutting 1 centimeter from the end, but all the way through to the bottom. So I'm just gonna keep going, pull my fingers back ever so slightly as I cut. And I'm doing these cuts really nice and thin, about 1 or 2 millimeters. Again, bridge hold when I get close to the end. Then I'm gonna turn it the other direction. And this time I'm gonna do the same thing. And when I do it, it's gonna cut that onion into tiny, tiny little pieces. Now you have to remember the very end we didn't cut. So this piece here, when I get to the end, is not gonna be cut, but I'm gonna teach you how to mince it. To mince, what I do is I take my fingers, I hold them on the end of the blade. I leave the tip of the blade of the knife down. And what I do is I just rock the knife back and forth over top of my vegetable or things that I'm cutting and allow it to move back and forth. You can mince all of this if you want to, just by taking the knife and rocking the back handle section of the knife up and down while the tip is pressed down with your fingers to mince it up nice and fine. So there we have it. Our onion is all chopped up and ready to go inside of our potatoes once it's ready. Again, I'm gonna go back, stir my potatoes as I don't want it to burn. As if some falls outside of your pot, just be careful. It might be really hot. Place it back inside the pan and continue to cook. So I'm leaving this on the medium heat the entire time. So I really need those potatoes to start softening up. There we have it. We got 4 more minutes, so I'll be back once they are finished cooking. So the timers just went off for my first 8 minutes, and I finished cutting the remainder of the onion. So I've got 1 full onion here. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna tip all of the onion into the frying pan with the potato. Now it looks like a lot, but that's okay. It needs to be this full. So we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna turn the back on, medium heat, power 3, and I'm gonna put my timer again for another 8 minutes. So we're gonna cook this for another further 8 minutes with the onion. Again, making sure that every minute and a half now, you're turning the potatoes, because you can see they're starting to brown and get some color. What I don't wanna do is I don't want them to burn. As soon as you got it all in there, tossed around, go ahead, put the lid on, and like I said, every couple minutes we're gonna stop and turn them around. My timer is just about to go off here, and so I've been, like I said, every minute and a half to maximum 2 minutes, you need to make sure that you're stirring the potatoes back and forth. So my timer just went off. Now it looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna let it sit there for a second while I crack my eggs. I'm gonna crack 4 eggs into a medium-sized bowl. Remember, when you crack an egg, hold on the side, tap, 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 get your crater, fingers inside, and then you can tip it upside down, and drop the egg inside of your bowl very easily. Once you have all your eggs inside of the bowl, go ahead, season the eggs as well with a little bit of salt and pepper. Salt, and then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna grab a fork and we're gonna whisk these eggs up. Once the eggs are whisked well, you can go ahead and stop, and then we're gonna add in our potato and onion mix. So here we go. Place them all inside. Put your frying pan back on the stove. You're gonna add in 2 more tablespoons of oil, olive oil, into your frying pan. The pan is still nice and warm. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna mix up all of the potato onion mixture with the egg now. And if you want to, you can let this sit for about 10-15 minutes to take on more of the egg and flavor. I'm just turning my bowl as I mix, just to make sure it's all mixed in there nicely. There you have it. I'm gonna let it rest for about 10 minutes, and then I'm gonna go ahead and cook it. So we're back now. It's been 10 minutes rested, and we're gonna start cooking it up. So we've got those 2 tablespoons of oil in our frying pan. Should coat the bottom. You're gonna go ahead, turn on your stove top again to a medium heat, and then we're gonna just go ahead and we're gonna make sure it's warm before you start pouring the egg in, so that it starts to set and cook the egg in the mixture immediately. So when you can just put your hand hovering over top of the pan once you feel the heat radiating, then you're good to go. So I can feel it now, so I'm gonna go ahead and place all of my mixture. Use your spatula to clean out your bowl. Put everything inside your frying pan. So we've placed all the egg inside of here. Just go ahead, spread it around. And then what you want to do is you want to set a timer for about 3 minutes to cook on a low to medium heat. So I'm going to turn this down 3 minutes. On a little bit lower heat till it sets and cooks. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how we're going to flip it. So now we've got all of the egg inside of the frying pan. Make sure you spread the egg out evenly and then set a timer for 3 minutes. Make sure you have it on a low heat so that you can cook it nicely without burning it. And then I'm going to show you how to flip it right after this. So my timer's almost up and I'm just going to go ahead and check it. So I'm going to take my heat-proof spatula, just tuck it underneath and make sure that the bottom of my tortilla has actually got some color. Run the spatula around the whole frying pan to make sure it's not stuck. And mine is loose, it's turning inside there, so it looks good. I got some nice color. If you don't have good color on it, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna cook it for a slightly longer period of time. Next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have to flip our tortilla so we can cook the top side now. So what I'm gonna recommend you do is you're gonna get a medium-sized plate. You're gonna go ahead, you're gonna take your spatula, tuck it underneath, get it quite far underneath, and then what you're gonna do is you're just gonna let it slide out onto your plate. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your frying pan and flip it over, put it over top of the tortilla, and then just count 1, 2, 3, and do a quick flip. Remove the plate, and then there you have it. You can place it back on the other side. We're gonna turn the heat up to 2 or 3, around a medium heat, and then I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes again, and then I'm going to check it. I might need to cook it for a little bit longer, or it might be done, and then I'm going to take it out and serve. So my Spanish tortilla is almost finished now. Just one last tip I want to mention for you all. As you're working, make sure you have a towel around nearby in case something is hot and you need to pick it up, or in case you spill or there's mess, you can always take your cloth. I'm constantly wiping up and cleaning up the surface around me. So now that this is done, I'm gonna go ahead and shut it off. I'm gonna run the spatula around the tortilla. Again, I'm gonna flip my spatula underneath of the tortilla, and then what I'm gonna do is just gonna carefully slide it out and place it onto my plate. And there we have it, our nice, beautiful Spanish tortilla. Last thing you're gonna need to do is you can grab a knife and you're going to then cut it in half. You can quarter it, you can cut it into however many pieces you want, and then it's nicely served up with some ketchup or mayonnaise, however you see fit.